Hello, everybody, and welcome or welcome back to the second shelf and the first check-in regarding my new project, Reading Europe. If you're not familiar, if you're new here, welcome to my channel. One of my big reading projects that I started this year is I want to read at least one book from every European country. And I define Europe broadly. You will find a link to the list of countries down in the description box, and it's like 50 or 51 countries in total. So it includes countries like Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan. It's Europe, the continent, so not the European Union and not, the more narrow definition of Europe. Anyway, I wanted to read from as many countries as possible. That's why I chose the broadest definition possible for the continent Europe. I listed the countries also in alphabetical order. The first 10 you find down in the description box as well, I think up to Cyprus. And like I said, one book at least from each country. And when I say book, I mean novel or memoir. So not a non-fiction book about a certain country, but either a novel or a memoir from that country. And I want to talk about the first three countries. And I will tell you what's upcoming in March and April. So if you are interested in reading along, that you have time, to get the book from the library or whatever, if you want to read along. Like I said, I'm repeating myself. And I will, I said that before, I think also I will film separate videos for this project, separate check-in videos, roughly every other month. So every 2 months, if I have read anything, of course. It's a long-term project. I will certainly not finish this year. Maybe I will be able to finish next year, but I doubt it, because I don't think I will read a book every other week. So it's a slow going project, but I'm really excited about it, and I also learned something about the various countries. So yeah. Anyway, the first country was Albania. And I chose this memoir, An Unruled Body by Anna Chika. She is an Albanian-born author, obviously, 1978 is her birth year, but she wrote in English because she also, she's a poet and a translator, and I think currently she lives in the US. I'm not 100% sure, but she wrote the book in English. That's why I'm not giving, I don't have to give any translator. So born 1978, that means she was a teenager just when the communist regime fell in 1990. She would have been 12, 13 years old. So this memoir chronicles her growing up as a child and a young teenager in still communist Albania. And Albania was one of those countries you couldn't even travel to. They closed off their borders, so it was a very secluded country, and her family was Christian, which was also difficult because my hair is kind of, anyway, you have to roll with it today. I'm just seeing that it's gonna fluffy all over. Anyway, so her family was Christian, but they had to hide the Bible. Religion was forbidden in the country. So that is part of the book, but the other part, big portion of the book, is about her issues with sexuality. She married a man, and they never had sex because she couldn't. She had horrible pain whenever she tried to have sex, and that is a big portion of the book, talking about that issue and what she did with it and where it came from. It was not a physical thing, so it was not. It was really psychological. Anyway, I don't want to give any spoilers if you want to read this book. For me, it was a mixed bag. I really thought the parts about Albania were fascinating. Given my age, 65 almost, I'm going to turn 65 in July, the whole issue with sexuality and coming of age in that respect, it was just not that interesting to me. I don't think I'm the audience for it. I felt it was very courageous the way she talked about her issues, because I mean it's very, very personal, obviously. But I felt that part was geared towards women of her age. I mean that she's almost 2 decades younger than I am. So it was a mixed bag for me, but still it was a good pick because it also gave me quite some insight into Albania before it opened up after 1990. The next country is Andorra. And Andorra is a tiny country. I will leave a map here somewhere. It's a tiny country between Spain and France, really tiny. They have roughly 80,000 inhabitants. It's a mountain country, and I couldn't find any book by a female author from Andorra translated into English. But then one of our most faithful subscribers and viewers, Jo Smith, she sent me a link to a poem by Teresa Colom, translated from the Catalan by Anne Crow, or Crow, I think Crow, because Andorra, you speak Catalan, some French, so they're tiny, but they have various languages. So this author, Teresa Colom, was born in Catalan, Catalonia, I think it is, Catalonia, but moved to Andorra. So thank you, Jo, again. I will leave a link to the poem below, translated into English. So at least I read something from Andorra. If you know a book by a female Andorra writer from Andorra, fiction or memoir translated into English, please let me know. The next country was... what did I? Sorry. I was distracted by some birds outside because it's spring. Armenia, and I chose this chunker of a book, The Grey House, written by Mariam Petrosyan, translated from the Russian by Yuri Machkasov. Published, I think, in Russia first in 2019. This is a fantasy novel set in a boarding school. And yes, you immediately think Hogwarts, but it's quite different. So it's a boarding school for children with a disability. Some are blind, some have prosthetics, some are in wheelchairs. We never really find out what the background is of this huge number of disabled children. And then they are, like we are familiar indeed from those books, they are in houses, you know, the houses. But there the similarity ends. It's violent, it's weird, it goes back and forth in time, and there is also the possibility of switching timelines for the protagonists. They all go by nicknames. So the book opens with a young boy called Smoker. He's in a wheelchair, but his attribute where he goes, his most significant attribute is that he smokes. So it's called, then his nickname is Smoker. They all go by various nicknames, and when they switch timelines, or even the various timelines, and even when they jump, the jumpers, they jump timelines, they change nicknames. So it's quite difficult to grasp who is who and what goes on, because there is some secrets in the school and the teachers. Yeah, in the end, it was not quite for me, but that's more because, as you know, if you follow my channel for any length of time, I am not a fantasy person. I struggle with fantasy. Very few fantasy books really speak to me. But if you are into fantasy, I think this could be something that you really, really like, even though it is quite a commitment with over 700 pages. But it is really different, and there is quite a substantial fan club of this book, where you find discussions about the chapters and the houses and the characters. So it is worth your while if you are into that genre, I would say. But for me, it was not 100% successful. But I do have, now I come to the books that I'm planning on reading, March, April. 4 books I have here. And the first one is also from Armenia. 2 subscribers and viewers recommended it to me, Nina and Vera. And that is 3 Apples Fell from the Sky by Nareen Abgarian. And this book was translated... Lisa C. Hayden. And as I said, I want to read at least 1 book. I mean, I'm not going to read 10 books, from a country where I easily have access to English translations like Italy. But if I have a second book, or maybe even a third, especially from a country that I have not read anything from, like Armenia, I'll go for it. So this is a book about an older lady, Anatolia, who is preparing to die, but it didn't quite happen. And then we learn about that village, a tiny village of Maran, nestled high in the Armenian mountains. So that sounded, I like an older protagonist. There are so very few in literature. That spoke to me, and the fact that 2 subscribers recommended it, and I will buddy read this with another very faithful subscriber who we all know as Amelia, and we will start I think next week. Well, if you count the weeks from Monday, then week after next, around the 17th or something, I think we will start. Yes. And then I have 3 more books. Oh, and one other thing, as you can see from the list down, I'm not necessarily going in alphabetical order from the countries in terms of reading them. I'm not now going to read a country with a P, but the first 5, 6 countries, I might read Belgium before I read Austria. But the idea is to go by alphabetical order, and I will tell you the countries up to Cyprus. Like I said, that's probably June. So those are the countries for the first half year. But like I said, I might not read everything in alphabetical order. Sorry about that. I'm a bit messy. Anyway, for Austria, I picked a book by Lilian Faschinger, Magdalena. This is the German title, Magdalena Sinner, The Sinner, but it has been translated into English by into English by Sean Whiteside. So if you want to read along but don't want to read German or can't read German, you can find an English translation. Countries that I read books from, like Austria or Belgium, that is coming up, I try to pick a book or an author that I would normally not read and certainly haven't read yet, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. The whole idea of this project is to broaden my horizon and read books that I would normally not find or read. So it doesn't make sense to read Austrian authors that I have read already. So this is about a woman. It's the Magdalena story, who abducts a priest. I have struggled with that word, abducts a priest, in order to confess her sins to him. And she has quite some murderous sins. So I'm going to read this with the already mentioned Joe Smith, and we will start, I think also second half, a week from now or something. So this is the Austrian pick. And then I just started the Belgian pick, Lize Spit. Oops. This is the Flemish edition, because I read Dutch. But there is an English edition. It means the melting. And the translator into English is Kristen Gehrman. This is a revenge story. So Eva is born in a tiny village, and then there is something happening, and 13 years later she comes back, and I mean, look at the shovel. You can imagine there's a revenge story going on. And it's quite a big book, but it won every possible prize that you can think of when it comes to literature in Dutch. Or Flemish, as the Belgian version of Dutch is called. And this book was published, by the way, in 2016. That's another thing. If I pick books, they should be relatively contemporary. So if something is published 1980, 1990, and I can't find anything else, I will pick it. But preferably 21st century. That would be fantastic. Then the next country I'm going to read is Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I picked this one, Catch the Rabbit by Lana Bastasic, translated from the Serbian by the author. Bosnia-Herzegovina, if I understood it correctly, also people speak Bosnian, Croatian, and Serbian. So she is from Serbia originally, but is considered a Bosnian author. I have a second Bosnian author already recommended to a couple of you. You find that down in the description box. This is a road movie, as you can see easily from the cover, and it's been childhood friends Layla and Sarah. They have been kind of not spoken for some time, but then they get together in order to find, what's his name, a road trip from Bosnia to Vienna in search of Layla's exiled brother Armin. That's all I know, and that's one of my two picks for Bosnia. So this is the first update. It's a bit messy still because I'm finding my way into this project, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I'm looking forward to your comments, and I will see you all soon in the next one, next Sunday.